Welcome to the latest World Cup date for June 12th. Jason Longshore, Jessica Sharman with you today to recap the action from France. Jess, how are you doing? How did it go today for you?
You know, it was a good day. Busy with soccer in the streets, but loving that there's always some soccer in the background on my laptop, which is nice. I've always got two screens running, and it's great to be entertained by the beautiful game.
Yeah, 3 matches, too, that I think all had some different elements to them. Nigeria 2-0 winners in the morning match over South Korea. Germany 1-0 in a battle of heavyweights in the noon kickoff. And then France, maybe controversially, and I figure we're probably going to talk a lot about the decision on the penalty in the second half. France wins 2-1 over Norway. Let's go chronological. Let's start with Nigeria. 2-0 over South Korea. South Korea is still alive in the tournament, although they're going to need a win, and they're going to need a big win in their final match against Norway. Nigeria gets a win here and is in a pretty good spot, and they'll go head-to-head with Norway in that final match. Both are on 3 points after today's results. I know for you, the storyline has to be the youngest goalkeeper to record a clean sheet in World Cup history for Nigeria.
Yeah, absolutely. We love a good goalkeeper story. Wasn't the hardest clean sheet to keep in the world, not the biggest challenge. You know, she's going to have a lot more shots to save against an opposition like Norway, but still a good, solid performance. There was one goal that was given for offside. Obviously, we talked a little bit off air on that. An interesting close offside call it was.
Really close call.
Yeah, absolutely. I think VAR comes in and it's the right thing to do in offside calls, but sometimes you just feel bad for them when it's that sort of split second of a call. But, she kept a shutout. That's a great story. And like I've said so many times during these different various updates, what's really improving in this World Cup is the quality of the goalkeeping. And with some of the defenses, they're having to be called into action a little bit more than they would like to be. But the level of goalkeeping overall has been far superior than any female tournament I've watched in the past.
Yeah, it's a great story too. Chiamaka Inadozie, 18 years old. She's 5'11", and she plays for Rivers Angels in Nigeria. 6 saves, that's a solid clean sheet. Take that.
I don't like save statistics though, Jason. We won't get into that too deep, but I mean, they don't count one-on-ones.
They don't all count the same. That's definitely true.
And then a catch count. So I think sometimes you can have a fantastic game. You can have an absolutely brilliant game and get 2 saves, or you can have an easy few catches and you have 8 saves.
I think in this competition, if they're going with Opta numbers, a catch would not count. So that part is definitely good. I think some college and some leagues here in the U.S. definitely get a little broad with their definition of save. I think this was a little stricter. I want to see how she takes the step from this. Not bounces back, but progresses from here, because you have a big test in Norway coming up in the next game, and look, Nigeria has every chance of getting through. So
absolutely, no pressure on her.
Position.
She's going to feel like she really has to have a big game, because obviously goal differential is going to be key in this tournament, particularly with the third places going through. Goal difference is going to be vital. So she has to have a big game against a really strong Norwegian side. But I know she's going to feel good about it. Every goalkeeper loves a clean sheet. She's not going to have to look back at anything too hard and pick on herself. And mentally, that's got to be great preparation to go against a stronger team.
Yeah, Chiamaka came to the fore in the U20 World Cup last year, and now she moves as an 18-year-old with the senior national team. Let's get into the middle game. Germany, 1-0 over Spain. There was a lot of concern about Germany with the injury to Marzipan, the star midfielder for the Germans. Broken toe. Maybe she'll be back in the tournament. We don't know yet. It's going to kind of go game by game.
She just needs magic spray.
Oh, that might be more than magic spray. That's a whole nother element with a broken toe.
I think that the Germans impressed us, though. I think
they did.
As we said with the China game, it was very choppy. We're not going to use the word dirty necessarily. I know that's been a taboo word on the Twitter world. But
hey, I'll use it. I think when it was 1 or 2, okay, fine. And I know some people were trying to equate Spain and their tackles to it today, and I thought Spanish tackles were just strong tackles, and yes, sometimes late. That happens. When you had multiple studs-up tackles to ankles all late from China, it crosses a line for me.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Spaniards may have watched the game and seen sort of the game plan and saw how the physicality did ruffle the Germans' feathers. And potentially that's why they were going a little bit harder. They learned, Germans don't seem to like a very physical game, which is interesting because their stature is pretty strong, pretty sizable. And it was nice to see the Spanish up their game. They've been known for beautiful passing play, but to show that physical presence, they did well and they hung in there, move for move, and they'll be disappointed looking back at the goal. I think potentially goalkeeper maybe should have dove on it quicker. And I think defender was caught in sort of slow-mo. It was like she was walking on water, getting ready to put that tackle in.
Yeah, you sometimes see those late in halves, and this was in the 42nd minute. Sarah Dabritz pounces on it after a save. Sandra Panos for Spain makes the save on the header from Alexandra Pop, but neither the goalkeeper or the defender nearby could react quick enough, and Dabritz thoughts at home. Spain, they had the possession, which you would expect with the way that they play, 64%. The biggest issue for me, though, looking back at this one, is Spain, with all that possession, only 2 shots on goal. It's not enough production.
Yeah, and any Atlanta United listeners will understand from early on this season, it's frustrating when you have a lot of the ball and you don't use it to create chances. It's not how much of the ball you see, it's what you do when you have the ball. And potentially we can praise the German defense for, shutting down those chances, blocking any real way to the goal. But still, as the Spanish, with their creative flow, they have to do better to turn that possession into chances. Because if you don't have shots on goal, you don't score. It's as simple as that.
This is what the Germans do, though. They sit, they soak up that pressure, they shut you down, they counter, and they countered effectively. They tested Spain even with less of the ball. And look, Germany's on a 14-match unbeaten run. They're on the longest group stage unbeaten run in World Cup history. This is what they do in tournaments, isn't it?
Yeah, they grind out results. They don't necessarily, when you watch both their games, maybe they don't deserve to win, so to say, through their actual quality of play, but their style. And what they've done is grind out results, and they've shut up shop at the back. They've had 2 shutouts, and if you don't concede, you don't lose. It's as simple as that.
2 1-0 wins, and the Germans are in a really good spot in Group B. Spain's on 3 points. China and South Africa played tomorrow, and neither one got any points out of their first games. Spain should be in a really good position playing China in the final match to advance as the second team in Group B. And if you're a U.S. fan, you're keeping an eye on that second-place team in Group B because that's who you will likely see in the round of 16. And it's probably going to be Spain, barring something crazy in the final set of games.
And that's going to be a little bit tougher than Thailand.
A little bit. Final match of the day. There's a lot to talk about here. France 2-1 over Norway. France gets the goal to open the scoring. Then it's an own goal from Wendy Renard. Then, as it's looking like it's going to be a draw.
Which would have been a fair result.
Would have been a fair result. There's a penalty called. Not on the field. It went to VAR, then it was called. I saw it, and my initial reaction was, that's the worst penalty called in the tournament. That was my gut feeling. And watching the replays, I didn't really change too much from that.
No, I thought it was really poor. The closest you can compare it to is the call against South Africa with the red card that was involved with the second yellow. But I think it's worse than that because the South African contact is so high, it's almost in the player's stomach. Right. It was a little bit more studs up, and maybe that's what they saw in it. This one is just a clearance again. It's momentum. But what really, really rubbed me the wrong way was how it came about. For me, the French player put herself in risk of a red card because she's gone in 2-footed. She's literally jumped 2-footed. If she had caught the Norwegian player, that's a straight red all day. It actually made me wince watching her jump in that style. And if she hadn't jumped in that way, no contact would have been made. For me, the Norwegian is trying to clear that ball We've all seen it. She's trying to welly it into Rosie, you know? Mm-hmm. And what happened was the French player got in the way and she was kicked in the aftermath. And for me, that's just not a penalty. It's a natural play. It wasn't any sort of challenge. Again, we are giving penalties now that aren't for a tackle. They're for clearing a ball and someone getting in the way of your foot, to put it quite, to the point.
Yeah, I'm with you completely. Like, I feel like it is very different than that South Africa penalty, because in that one, the opposing player who gets kicked, definitely higher, and also is in a position to play the ball. The French player here, after jumping in 2-footed in that way, has no chance to do anything with the ball, and it's a clearance with no one around except for then all of a sudden a player jumps into the play, not to play the ball, but it felt like to draw contact, and that shouldn't be rewarded. I disagree with some of the people saying like, oh well, it's obviously reckless. I don't think when the clearance started, it wasn't reckless.
The only reckless person in that play was the French player that decided to jump in 2-footed. And I think, like you say, potentially there was some gamesmanship in there. It was sort of, obviously it's not a dive because contact was made. It probably hurt. It was a painful contact. But she got herself, just how players sometimes kick the ball away and then run into the challenge. It was sort of that equivalent, and that should not be praised or rewarded with a penalty. And to give the yellow card too, it was just harsh all round on Norway and a cruel way to lose. And as I mentioned on Twitter, for me, this is going to impact the way defenders play. Not only have they got the issue of the handball, as we've seen multiple times, if your hand is anywhere basically than other behind your back or right by your sides, a handball is going to be called. So they're going to have to play with their hands behind their back and not play comfortably. But they're also now going to be scared of any sort of 50-50 challenge. And that's just not right. I understand I'm getting a hard time. People are telling me, well, players have had to adapt to new rules in the game. Yeah, they have, but this is something different.
Yeah.
I understand, you can't compare this to something like the goalkeepers suddenly not being allowed back passes. It's not the same thing. This is something that happens continuing in a game in a split second. And the biggest issue for me is, as a defender, you don't have a second to think about things. Things are meant to be a natural reaction. They're quick. These things happen without time to think. And if in the back of your mind you're constantly worried about giving away a foul and knowing that VAR is sort of watching your every move, you're not going to be able to play in the same way.
No, you're not. And I don't like that the video assistant referee resulted in this, because it feels like it's an overreach. It's a judgment call on the field, and it was not rules of penalty. This is not a situation where you're telling an AR to keep a flag down and let's look at the video, because it is a yes or no. This is a judgment call, and I don't think VAR can take something out of context and
slow it down
properly.
And slow it down in a way that isn't done. And for me, again, our biggest issue right now with VAR is it's great when it's a yes or no. You can't really use your biases or your opinions when it comes to offside. But when it comes to something like this that is so down to interpretation, and you could watch it, I could watch it 100 times, someone else could watch it 100 times, we'd both come to a different conclusion, and that's when it's problematic. That's when it's frustrating, and that's when players feel like they've been robbed. And for Norway to go from having a really vital point in their hands, suddenly, they're down, and I would be really mad if I was one of the Norwegian players.
Yeah, and you could see some reactions, and I've not heard anything out of Norwegian media yet, but there's got to be some pretty fiery quotes, because
it's got to be hometown bias. Do you know what I mean? When it came against France, they've got that home crowd, and you can't help but think hometown bias in a moment like this. And one more thing I want to point out about it, how big was the appeal from the French team? Just like how we talked about when the handball with England and Scotland, there wasn't really that much of an on-field appeal. And I felt like it was similar in this one. I think the only girl that really complained was the girl that had been kicked and was rolling around because, it probably hurt. But it wasn't one of those where you're demanding the referee to take a look at it. And that comes from the VAR.
Yeah, I mean, when I'm reading some of the recaps of this, and, Sporting News and Goal.com have reports, and when you see this is how the foul was described. Engen was adjudged to have followed through on Marion Tarrant. What does that mean?
What's wrong with following through?
You
That's
have to follow through.
How am I going to get a strike of the ball if I stop? The only way, anyone that understands the biometrics of a human body knows that the only way you generate power through a kick is by following through and potentially landing on your kicking foot. That's what you're taught as a kid. You need to follow through in the direction you want the ball to go and plant your foot afterwards. Now, if a player gets in my way and my follow through, I'm sorry, but that's not your fault.
I'm all for, and I completely agree with it and remind people all the time about the whole thing that I think we have here in the States about, well, if you got the ball, then there's no foul. That's not true. That's not true. But in this case, that actually feels like a big part of it because it's not that the French player Tarrant had the ball. It was a loose ball. And
a 50-50.
Yeah, I mean, the clearance is in motion, I believe, before Tarrant jumps in. So there's really nothing Engen could do. There's nothing she can do because if she backs out of that clearance, her coach is going to be furious with her, as they should be.
And a goalkeeper. If I'm a goalkeeper I'm worried, I mean, this is what I'm talking about. These changes in the rules or these changes in adaptations through VAR mean as a goalkeeper, you're concerned that your players aren't going to clear a ball. It impacts every single person in the field. And it's not a good thing, in my opinion. I want to know, I mean, I can't even think how many penalties we've had this tournament, but it feels like nearly every game we're talking about a penalty or at least a VAR look at a penalty. And I don't like it. Penalties used to be something that were few and far between for actual fouls, for handballs, for real decisions, because they're game-changing plays, you know? Penalties give a team, you know, a 90 or 80% chance of scoring, and it's just not fair to have all of these penalties. And we talked about it before. I want to know what the record is, you know? How many penalties it's been in the World Cup, because we're going to smash it in this World Cup. I'm sure of it.
It's definitely going to come up, and I have not seen a number yet. So anybody out there listening, if you can find out the Women's World Cup tournament that had the most penalties called, please let us know, because I'm with Jess. It feels like every game there is a penalty. VAR is a change in the way referees call it. Many of these referees have not worked in leagues that use VAR on a regular basis, so there is a little bit of just mechanics and understanding of how things go. There's also, you know, most of these players, most of these managers have not been in matches that have had VAR, and it's a whole different mindset. We saw it in MLS firsthand where it feels like now it's starting to turn the corner and it's a little smoother and a little more comfortable, although controversy still happens. This is brand new, and it feels like every game these are the conversations we're having right now, and it's a shame because the soccer has been really good in this tournament, really enjoyable.
Yeah, I can't agree with you more. The soccer is brilliant. The quality has improved so much. The games are more competitive, but that's what makes it so much harder. When games are so close, when teams are working so hard and competing and it's even, for something to come down to the line, like in this one. I mean, Norway, you would have thought France was going to win reasonably comfortably just based on the previous games and watching the two teams play. And Norway worked their asses off and were punished by something that I think is dubious. And it's a shame when our speaking points are continually about refereeing decisions. I know it's a hard job. I've refereed before. It's tough when people are complaining at you constantly. But that's where there has to be more guidance. There has to be more help for all these officials, because otherwise it's going to be a continued talking point, and it's just not right for anyone.
No, it's not good for the tournament as a whole. Let's get into the two games tomorrow. We'll start with the later one. It's China and South Africa, both on 0 points after losses in their first match. They're in Group B with Germany on 6 points at the top, Spain on 3 points after 2 matches played. I think China's the favorite here, but a win gives either one a really good shot of going through as a potential third-place team.
Yeah, absolutely. China has to be a favorite. They are the more established team. But I think South Africa were kind of hard done by. They worked so hard in their past game, and maybe they're going to come out and rue revenge. And I hope they do. They have some talent out there. They just need to stick to their game plan, play how they to their strengths, not be playing the ball out the back all the time, not being afraid to clear the ball long and, an awkward bounce or something over the top of China. And I think if they use their strength, they use their physicality against a China team that may be dirty but isn't the most physically dominant in terms of their size and bodies on the field, I think we could have an upset maybe.
Possibly, yeah. It's an interesting matchup. I think the most interesting matchup maybe of the tournament so far is the noon kickoff, Australia and Brazil. Brazil dominant in their match over Jamaica, although Jamaica did have more of that than the 3-0 result. Australia, their backs are against the wall. I mean, this is a team I picked to make a final. I think attack-wise, they're as good as anybody in the tournament, but they've got to figure out a way to stop Brazil's attack. This game feels like it could be a 5-3 type of match.
Yeah, I agree. I think when you're looking at how Australia played against the USA in that warm-up game, this is kind of that similar matchup. You've got a Brazilian team that has a lot of strength up top. We saw Christian, incredible. And Australia just has to get more organized at the back. They have a fantastic forward in Kerr. They always look like scoring goals, but on that flip side, they always look like conceding. And Australia are just going to have to shut up shop. They're going to have to defend better. And as much as they want to prioritize their forward-going play, every attack has to start out of the back, and they need to sort of tighten the ship at the back before they're going to think about going forward. And against a team with Brazil's quality who are feeling themselves, they're feeling hot right now. Australia are kind of licking their wounds. So I think this could be a really interesting one. And I agree, Jason. I think there's going to be goals. That's what I guarantee with that one.
Yeah, and Italy's just sitting back, watching, pulling for that draw. They want the 3-3, 4-4 crazy draw, and then Italy would be in the prime position in this group, playing Jamaica on Friday. They'd be in a great spot.
Yeah, who would have called that one? You'd have
Nobody.
Never called that. So it's exciting. That's what we want. We want those unpredictable games. We want close matchups. We want goals. Who doesn't want goals? And we want the neutrals to realize that. And I'm so impressed with how, so many people that haven't even looked at women's soccer before are enjoying it. Fantastic. And that's what we need. We need more even, close games, lots of goals. That's what the neutral loves.
Yeah, and we always try to keep you up to date on some of the other news off the field. One report about ratings from yesterday, and kind of a surprising one. Telemundo reported that the U.S.-Thailand match drew nearly 500,000 viewers across all of their platforms, TV and streaming. Most watched U.S. Women's World Cup group stage match in Spanish-language TV history. It's not the
awesome.
Fox number. That's the Telemundo number, 500,000. That's amazing.
And you got to think how many combined that will have between Fox. Telemundo, I've been watching some of their coverage. It's been really good. And
it has been.
What I love, again, we talked about it plenty of times, Jason, before, is that these Spanish-speaking and Latin American channels are really prioritizing the women's game. And that's why we're having so much more success of the Latin American teams, because they're investing and they're valuing the female game. And it's exciting. It's very exciting.
Oh, I have it. The overnight ratings are actually up from Fox. It was 2.2. It's up from the first game in 2015, which was a 2.1. So ratings are going up across the board anywhere you look. Everybody is interested in this, and the tournament's delivered. It's been really entertaining. I think tomorrow we'll continue that, and we'll be back tomorrow after the games to give you another Cup date and get you up to speed on the Women's World Cup. Thanks for listening. We'll be back tomorrow.